Welcome to the Thrill of Driving podcast, and with all due apologies to our viewers/listeners for last week. We didn't have a podcast last week because Atish was farting around and he forgot about the podcast. So
you were not even in office, okay? So there's no question about doing the podcast.
We could have done it. See, technology is there. I'm sure you can use and harness technology, right, to do something. You just have to remember.
Of course, yeah. But an update about the Thrill of Driving podcast. We're going to stop hosting it on YouTube where you're watching it right now. We're only going to be putting it on our podcast channel. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher. There's a bunch of, I'll read out the whole list, 1 second. Breaker, Overcast, Pocketcast, Radio Public. We're on all these channels. So we're going to be putting links to every single channel in the description below. If you like and follow the podcast, do follow it on one of these channels going ahead. It's going to be up there every week, just like we do here, but on the podcast channels.
And that's because a lot of y'all have commented that y'all don't want to look at our silly faces while we're talking for an hour, which I also don't blame you. But if you think we should be putting it on YouTube, please also do let us know. We might be wrong in what we're doing. But anyway, going forward, what were we doing last week, right?
Last week was a very, very special week. So if you don't know, next month, that's October, is the anniversary issue of Evo India. It's going to be our 6th anniversary. And for the anniversary issue, we had to do something big. And we did something, well, really, really, really big. This man was out of town the whole week, which is why we didn't shoot the podcast. But he was in Italy driving what?
Yeah, so for the anniversary issue, you have to have a special car. As far as special cars go and special brands go, there's nothing more special than Ferrari, is there? Yeah. So I went to Maranello, home of Ferrari, to drive the F8 Tributo. The replacement to the 488.
How do you pronounce it? Is it Tributo?
It is Tributo. Obviously, if you're Italian, you'll say Tributo, right? You have a little more Latin flair, but it is Tributo, the F8 Tributo. It doesn't follow in the same naming cycle that the 488, the 458 before that. This one, because now compared to the 458, the 488 engine is downsized, then now how do you really play around with those numbers?
There is a logic to the name.
Yeah, so Tributo is a tribute. The tribute is to the engine in the back of the Tributo. That engine has won the International Engine of the Year award for the last 4 years running. It was the engine that debuted with the 488 GTB, the twin turbocharged V8 engine. It also was voted the best engine of the past 20 years. So Ferrari, in the Ferrari style, they've really created a car around this insane engine. An engine that actually replaced natural aspiration. So once the 488 came, the naturally aspirated V8 in the 458 and the 458 Speciale, which was like the high point for Ferrari's naturally aspirated engines, then it became turbocharged. And this is the engine.
And could it also be looked at as a tribute to the mid-engine V8 Ferrari as we know it? Because going ahead, it's going to be hybridized or electrified in some way or the other,
Yeah, so I think this is going to be the last turbocharged engine without any hybrid technologies over it. It's also a bridge. So Ferrari had this, and in their presentation, there is a very clear thing that this is the bridge between the current Ferraris and the Ferraris of the future. So in terms of the styling, it has links of the 488 before it, and also of the SF90 hybrid that is coming, and it has been already showcased. So in the way the headlamps have become slimmer, the rear, the quad tail lamps, those are hark back to the older Ferraris like the 288 GTO, for instance, the 355. So there's a lot of tribute to the past as well as a connection to the future. And in the future, now Ferrari at their recent annual shareholder meeting, they announced that they will make a V6. So, So Ferrari is going to make a V6. When did they make a V6 before?
Dinos.
In the Dino, which was never a Ferrari. It was the Dino. And of course, that engine also went into...
What? The Lancias.
The Lancias, the rally cars. Yeah. So that engine Ferrari made for Lancia, or Lancia took it from Ferrari. They were part of the same Fiat empire, so to speak. So Ferrari will have V6s. Right, they will have V12s. They clearly said that they will continue with development of the V12. Obviously, there will be some form of hybrid.
No V8s, or will the V8s just
evolve?
No,
so the V8s will evolve. I think the V8s will become even more extraordinary. I wouldn't say extreme. I would say extraordinary. Extreme I would use for the V12s. So this is kind of like an, I don't know how to put it, not an in-between, not a stopgap, but a bridge to the future. So it is an important car. It is all new. Only the doors and maybe the glass line has been taken from the 488. Apart from that, it is all new.
Yeah, and it looks, man, and a lot of aero work has been done to it, right?
So Ferrari, they clearly say that they don't like movable aero devices on the top of the car. So they don't believe in those Evo style big wings, or even what Porsche does with the RSs and all that. No, those big wings that really appeal to boy racers like us. They work on the wind tunnel, on fine tuning these small little things that really have evolved from Formula One. So DRS, it has a similar DRS kind of feature. So it's got flaps in the rear diffuser that open and shut. So you get less drag when you're in a straight line. Then they increase the downforce when you're in corners.
Do you feel all this on the road?
No, you really cannot feel all this. I don't think you really have to be Alonso or Vettel or no, like a really good driver to be able to make out that these aero devices were moving. I asked the aerodynamicists whether, like what Lamborghini is doing. No, they do these individual sides,
The ALA.
like the ALA. That what is it? What's the full form for? Aerodynamic Activa, whatever. So I asked them that no, do you do like increase the downforce on the inside wheels, reduce it on the outside wheels? And they clearly said that you want maximum possible downforce. You don't want to be compromising downforce on the outside and adding more on the inside. He said that whatever is available, we give the maximum possible downforce. And obviously, the figures are there to prove it. It is quicker than the 488 GTB around Fiorano. And with the special Michelin Cup 2 tires.
That gets me thinking though, 1 second. Sorry, interruption. What if you somehow tune that Lamborghini Huracan Performante to give you maximum downforce in corners and flaps on instead of ordinary?
Okay, so interesting question, because somebody asked us, now this engine, okay, it's got a gas particulate filter, a gasoline particulate filter. So somebody asked that, like in our old cars, for the Zen, for instance, right? We used to disconnect the catalytic converter to get a little bit more power. So they said that if you disconnect the gasoline particulate filter, will we get more power? And they said that today, with the kind of electronics that are there in the car, it is virtually impossible to disconnect one aspect of the car.
Because the whole fueling would go
everything will go and everything is interconnected. So similarly, with the Lamborghini, I don't think really you can disable ALA to give you all the flaps to open or all the flaps to close, because the car is tuned to that. Right? Yeah. So trying to play around with this, you need to be genius level with your laptop, because everything is eventually controlled by your laptop, right? So to disconnect this, to activate that, I am not too sure that will really work.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And you drove the car now. You drove it at bloody Fiorano. How's driving at Fiorano?
See, this is one of those bucket list things. The first time I drove, the first car I drove at Fiorano was the California, when it was first launched.
That's not, how do you drive a California at Fiorano?
So we had gone for the Bologna Motor Show, and then we called somebody I knew at Ferrari, and they said, yeah, come down. So we went down there. The car was parked at the historic entrance. The PR guy came, gave us the keys and says, enjoy yourself. And we're like, huh?
Who says that nowadays? Huh?
Yeah, but they do, huh? The Ferrari guys, that's how all their drives are when we haven't gone for like a properly organized media drive, but we just gone to drive a car. It's like a car is there, they'll give you the keys and they'll say, enjoy yourself. In the days before navigation, they used to give us a road book and say that, no, last time we did drive, we used this route. If you would like to use this. Otherwise, see you in the evening. And ciao. And that's how they are. They're like super chill with giving you the car.
Ferrari a full tank of gas and say, have fun.
Yeah. Of course, it's not super chill to get to that stage where they give you the keys. But once you're sorted, once they say that, okay, come drive the car, they give you the key and go, have fun. It's incredible. So then we said that no, this is the first time that it was not the first time for me, but for our crew, we were doing it for the TV show back then. That first time we are doing a TV show. So can we drive it at Fiorano? And they were going to have the Christmas party the next week at Fiorano. Okay. So they said, okay, come.
There must be some Christmas party.
Yeah. So they were building these tents for the party, and they said, okay, just be careful because there are workers on the track. And you got 5 laps, go film, shoot. So we had a Fiat in front of us for 2 laps doing some filming. And then 2-3 laps I drove the car. Obviously not at like full pace because you don't want to knock over somebody.
And Fiorano is narrow.
Fiorano is narrow.
At least in the pictures.
It is narrow. The runoffs aren't like modern tracks. And to think, so you're there in the pits. The 2 F8s are warming up. Okay. And this is hallowed territory, right? This is territory where gods have graced.
Yeah.
So you're there, you're walking around, and then you're wondering that Michael Schumacher, when he was developing Ferrari into this world-beating team, he used to park himself at Fiorano every day. He would bang in lap after lap. It would be dark. He would still be banging lap after lap to get that last tenth. And to think that they were driving Formula One cars there in on a track which has got really no runoff. In a car like the F8, you're worried. Like if you go off big time, you can hit something. You can leave a smear of red paint on the Armco. And he was driving Formula One cars and he was developing them into this world-beating force. And such a force that Formula One then banned testing. They banned teams from using their own private tracks because nobody else had their own private track. But Ferrari have and still have their own private test track.
Showed,
and the results showed. Yeah.
It showed in the results. So
and today, you have apartment blocks very close to the track. So on the main straight, there is a board that says gas off. So on the main straight, you have to lift off the gas. And then when you cross the bridge, there's a board that says gas on and you can go back on the gas. Because otherwise, according to European noise regulation limits, you'll be exceeding the decibel count. Even in a road car like an F8. It is that loud.
So, Fiorano, do you have a favorite corner there?
No, I really... it's just, see, these are tracks we as journalists are supposed to be a little impartial with our opinions. But when you drive something at Fiorano, you're always like, you're just so overawed by the history of the place. Your cars are parked in front of Enzo's house. In Piazza Michael Schumacher, which is a courtyard in front of his house. It is impossible, if you have petrol in your veins, it is impossible not to just walk around like, oh God, look at where I am.
We're supposed to be journalists.
Right?
And we're just...
And then when you're driving on the track, the other thing that Ferrari does differently is that they take you out on a sighting lap by one of their test drivers. And then they say that use the Maranello in all modes. Every other drive that we go for, they say do not switch off ESP. Whereas Ferrari says, listen, we have done SSC 6.1, we have done FDE Plus, Ferrari Dynamic Enhancer Plus. We have engineered the car to oversteer by up to 15 degrees before it catches and saves you from yourself. Try it out. Then try it with CT off and see how it works. They encourage you to slide the car. So after the first lap, then you are all thinking about, okay, now where is it going to slide? How much is it going to slide? And do all that. And except for this time where it was raining, but it wasn't raining hard enough for them for the rain to wash off the marbles. Marbles are those bits of tire that fly off the line. You see it in Formula One off the racing line. There's all this black rubber. Those are marbles. So the rain didn't wash off the marbles. So the marbles were still there, but it was greasy. It was cold. And the Ferrari test driver said that, no, as much as I would like to, and they really apologized profusely, but they said that just stick it in wet mode because there is too much power and the track is completely inconsistent. So I did my laps at Fiorano in the F8 Tributo in wet mode.
But it still must have been crazy.
I did try it in the sport mode also, but then it went, all over the place, right?
So there is a big difference?
No, there is a big difference, definitely, right? But the track was just all over the place, right? So there wasn't much that you could really, apart from getting one or two shots of the car a little sideways, but there was not much that you could glean about the dynamics by driving it at Fiorano. So for the first time in my life, I drove a Ferrari in wet mode. Even in India when I've driven it, I've never driven it in wet mode. But there's the first time for everything, I guess.
Yeah, of course. And then you did drive it out on the road as well, right? The hills, the legendary hills around.
Yeah, so every time Ferrari have a different route, but it's always ex-Maranello. So you always start, your cars are always parked in Piazza Michael Schumacher, you always do a few laps at Fiorano, and then you're sent into the hills. But there's so many of the Tuscan hills are all around Maranello, so they always send you in different directions. And these are regular public roads. Now, the roads in Italy aren't like in Germany or in Austria where it is super smooth and nice and wide. In Italy, the roads are narrow because they make roads for small Fiats. It is bumpy. It is not the smoothest surface. So these are roads that are like Ambi Valley, the road going up to Ambi Valley and Lavasa before the rains. Now they're ruined after the rains. But no, if you live around Mumbai, Pune, you would be familiar with the road that goes up to Lavasa and Ambi Valley. So the nice patches, that is what you find in Italy. And those are the roads that we drove the Ferrari over. And what really stuns you is the comfort. You can feel the bumps. Now, you have to feel the bumps because this is a really hardcore sports car, right? but it takes the edge off it. It's not like when you go over a bump, say in a KTM for instance, no, the breath gets taken out of you. But in this, you can feel it going over the bump, but the breath doesn't get taken out of you. You can drive it and it feels comfortable. It feels compliant. You have that feeling that this is a high performance car and there's like this lot of power in it, but it doesn't feel like, oh god, this is brutal.
And what about the engine? I mean, it's the Pista engine and all of that.
Yeah,
How does it feel on the road?
So this is the Pista engine, but the only difference being that this has got that gasoline particulate filter. So they say that the GPF, it takes 15-20 horsepower out of the engine. So the engineers are damn happy that they've managed to get the same power output as the Pista. How does it feel on the road? See, the Pista, we drove it 2 months ago. We took it to the Ran of Kutch. Then we actually drove it from Dasada, which is on the edge of the Ran of Kutch, to Ahmedabad for that enthusiast meet, for the Brent Garage meet. And I was riding shotgun with Bhupesh Reddy, and the car is stiff. The car is hardcore. The Pista, it is hardcore. And by the time we got to Ahmedabad, I was like,
it feels like a race car.
Yeah, I was like, I had enough of it. I wanted to sit in the V class and head back to Pune. Whereas the F8, it's comfortable. So the car is not just the engine, right? It's the engine as well as the car. And the car is comfortable. And in regular mode, the engine, it feels docile. The gearbox, it shifts like any other twin clutch. Okay, smooth. It's not at all intrusive. It is just easy, comfortable. You can drive it. It's like an everyday usable Ferrari. Now, there is no such thing as an everyday usable Ferrari. Maybe the Portofino. But
maybe the new one that's coming soon.
Maybe, but these cars are Ferraris. Now, Ferraris are not everyday drivers' cars. You wouldn't, right? But you can drive it. It's comfortable. It's relaxed. And then when you get up into the hills, when you put it into race mode, hell, man, the way that car goes, the first time you step on it, it's frightening. It's like a missile. It's like a rocket that you're like, oh, and it's relentless. And that's the thing with these turbocharged engines. Now, we moan about the demise of naturally aspirated engines, but you got to remember that naturally aspirated engines, you had to rev it, you had to work it to get the power. Of course, the noise would make your hair stand on end, all of that. But with a turbocharged engine, you don't really have to work it. It's just a relentless surge of torque. It's volcanic, that energy. You can never exhaust that energy.
And that is what I was getting at when I asked you about the engine, because I was reading your story. It's actually going to come out in the October issue, so make sure you pick up the magazine and read the full story. It's really, really well written. You mentioned that there's no turbo lag. How do you engineer and how do they make no turbo lag in a turbo car?
In the presentation, they said zero turbo lag. And it is zero. Their response is instantaneous. Now, they showed us graphs, and the 458 Speciale has got better throttle response. But that is really, you cannot feel it. You breathe on the throttle and it moves. It's just not there. There is no such thing as turbo lag in a F8 engine. It's unbelievable, but I'm telling you for a fact, it just does not have turbo lag. It's instant. You step on it and it moves, and how it moves, that the acceleration, it just blows your mind away. You put it into launch control, you do your first launch control run, and you're like shocked. Plus, this is not an all-wheel drive car. This is a rear-wheel drive car. Yet, it generates so much grip. It managed to grip, bite, and fling you at the horizon. And the best part is, okay, so this is obviously great. But the best part is FDE+. Now, this is Ferrari. And
what is FDE+?
Okay, so this is Ferrari Dynamic Enhancer, which uses genius-level electronics to control the car and to give you a safety envelope while you still oversteer the car. So you are oversteering the car, but the car's electronic brain is monitoring what you're doing. And if it senses that you're going to fluff it, it'll hold you. If it senses that, okay, you know what the hell you're doing, it will let you slide and will let you play. And this now works in race and as well as in CT off mode.
So that would be a good car to learn to drift on, wouldn't it?
I wouldn't suggest.
Because I mean, it's got this nice safety net.
So the thing is that you have to be progressive because there's so much of torque, right? This you can only really experience in third, but more like in so third gear, fourth gear. In first and second gear, like in a hairpin, for instance, a lot of us, when you want to be childish, in a hairpin, you just slam the throttle and you get the tail out and you catch it. But here, because there's so much of torque, the tail will come out like really quick. And even though the Ferrari has got very quick steering, it will be next to impossible to catch it as quick. So the FD doesn't really work so well in first and second on the
longer slides.
Yeah, so it's those instant slides. It will catch it. It will hold it. It doesn't think that you'll be able to catch it in time. Whereas when you're in third gear and on a fast corner and then you get the tail out, it'll let you dance. It'll let you get the tail out. You got half a turn of opposite lock, and you got this lovely drift. And the thing is that you do this and you think you are God. You're like, shit, man, look at what I'm doing. Now I'm a driving God. Next, I should be in Formula One. And luckily for me, after I did that run up the mountains, and this was after lunch, where before lunch, I successfully managed to get my partner, my co-driver, sick. So he decided to go to the museum. So I had the car all to myself, no driving partner with me, and I started fooling around and having fun. And then I had the photographers up there, so then we went and did some low speed tracking shots and everything. And then I did that run again, and that's when I realized that every single corner I was doing exactly the same. I was not overcorrecting it. I was not getting the tail out the other way. It was not snapping around. And that's when I realized that I am not that precise a driver. I am not that good. But the car makes you that good. And that is the electronics working. Yeah. It is making sure that you're just enough, but not over the hill. It's freaky. It's unreal, but it is a fact. Yeah. And that's what you talk about Formula One and racing technologies for the road. And this is that. This is all the genius level engineering that goes into race cars, into Formula One cars, really coming back into road cars. What a highlight. Driving a Ferrari, I always say that you drive a Ferrari in Italy and that's like the highlight of your year. Yeah. And
so your year's done, F8, so I get all the next press drives.
We'll see. But as of now, driving a F8 in Italy, man, my month is made. That's for sure.
He's got a high expectation. Right? Just the month. Next month, something else.
And the other thing with the Ferrari drives is that they really make you work for your drive.
Work meaning?
Which means they put you in classroom. So, so this time, for a change, before the classroom, they put us into overalls and they got us to work on a F8 engine.
Yeah, that must have been damn cool.
Right, so putting the pistons into it, putting the spark plugs on, the fuel rails on. So just a little bit, fiddling around. Of course, it's just
the demo.
It's just a demo, right? We didn't build a full engine and we didn't sign off on an engine. And don't worry, you won't have an engine in the back of your F8 that was built by a bloody journalist. So that's not going to happen. But it's just such a cool way of really getting you to love the brand even more. Yeah. As it is, we hero worship Ferrari. Yeah. And then now you really worked on an engine. So it's like even more of a hero worship. And then after that, they stick you in this massive room. This time it was in the Centro Stile, the new Ferrari design center at Maranello at the factory, where there was this huge video wall and we went through 101 slides. I kid you not, 101 slides. We had 6 people giving presentations. So the product marketing guy, the engine guy, the aerodynamics guy, they call it aerothermal engineering. Did I say the engine guy? Cool. The dynamics guy. Yeah. So all of these guys are there standing in a line and they say, okay, we warned you, 2.5 hours of presentation. So like some strong industrial grade coffee, you knock back 2 shots and then you sit through that presentation.
But it must be so cool to have access to all these people, right?
Yeah, because it is.
Normally it's what, a Copcom guy or the head product guy who comes and gives you the presentation?
Not really. Normally when we go on drives in Europe, you do have the engineers who are there. Which is really cool to listen to them, and because these guys are really hardcore, they've got petrol in their veins. But it is great because then you're open to ask whatever questions you want. So you ask them that, okay, but this is just the piston engine, and then he'll explain to you that, listen, it is the piston engine, but it's got the GPF, and because of that, this is what happens, and that's why this, and this is why that, right? They talk to you about the gearbox and how Ferrari still makes the best twin clutch gearbox. It is really the best twin clutch gearbox because in terms of the responses, it is unbelievable just how quick it is. And then you have dinner, which is at the Ferrari canteen in the Ferrari factory, but in the private area where I'm sure all the big bosses, when they come, they have dinner there or lunch there, where a mama in the kitchen is making this homely pasta and steaks. and you have these tables where components of the engine are centerpiece.
Okay.
So on our table, we had the turbocharger as the centerpiece, and talking to the engine guy on what he's done with the engine. I asked him about diesel engines, and he says, I've never worked on diesel engines. I've consciously stayed away from diesel engines because I do not like diesel engines, and why that is. So you have these really interesting conversations with car guys, and then you go out and drive one of the best cars that you've driven all year.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
that's the Ferrari experience. It's not just, and that's what I've written also. This time, I don't know whether this really works in this day and age, but I've done a 3,300 word story on the F8.
It's long.
It is long, it's 14 pages. But I just wanted to do, and I got a lot of questions and queries on social media about the whole Ferrari experience. And that's what I've tried to weave into the story. So it's not just the F8 drive. The F8 drive starts 6 pages after the opening double straight picture, right? So you can jump straight to the driving impressions, or you can really read through what the entire experience of driving a Ferrari in Italy is like, including sitting through 101 slides. It's really like going back to college.
Yeah, so that's a really special story, and it's I think a great anniversary cover story.
Yeah, so I'm sure you like the cover also. So give us your comments. Please do leave us your comments when you see it. And moving on, Atish also drove a red car.
I drove a very red
A red car that he's been dreaming, lusting, yearning, having pangs over for ages, right?
Right. Yeah. So growing up, the Porsche 911 was my poster car, and I've written this in the story as well. You know, I had this poster of a 997 GT3 RS orange, and those cars had GT3 RS slammed on the side on the doors. You know how Carrera used to be written on the older.
And the thing is, those cars had those big wings.
Yeah.
And big wings really stick in your head.
And you're a kid, man. You see this orange car, and it looks so mad, and it's got these big important sounding letters on the side of it, and I was like, this is it. This is the car that I want, you know. And there was a Murcielago at the side, doors open. There was a Gallardo. There was the SL65, those fat rear tires, the black AMG edition. But that 911, it captured me, you know. It hooked me onto the 911. And that time it must have been this juvenile obsession with the car. You know, it's orange and it has a big wing and it has these important letters on the side. But over the years, you know, as obviously I grew older and I got more involved with cars, and more I read about it, the more I heard people talk about it, the more the 911 sort of grabbed my attention, and I sort of developed this appreciation for the car and the love for the legacy and the whole story behind it and everything, you know. And getting into this job, that was the car that I wanted to drive. It was the one car that I had to get my hands on. 4 years it took me, but it finally happened.
Yeah, and before that you've driven Cayennes and all of that, right?
Yeah.
So
Cayennes
all those stars.
And when Porsches, they always made me feel special, but the 911 was the 911. There's nothing like the 911.
So a lot of people do say that the 911, so the 991 looks like the 992, looks like the 997, looks like the...
to somebody who's not into 911s, it would look the same. But if you look at the 992, like my favorite external feature would be the hood, you know, the luggage compartment hood. It now has these two lines in them. It harks back to the first 911s. You know, they had that gash in the bonnet. The headlamps, the way they're housed, they look like the 993. The tail lamps, they've now got this light bar, and now everyone's doing light bars. Audi's doing it. They did it with the Panamera. They're doing it with the Cayenne. But on the 911, they've been there on all-wheel drive Carreras. You know, so right from the 964s. So these are these little elements that they're drawing from 911s of the past, and what I like the most about the Porsches is their soft designs. They're not aggressive, hard designs. They're not Lamborghinis. They're not BMWs, which are trying to be in your face. The lines are soft. They're rounded off. They're not.
Well, until there is a GT3 RS on the 992.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Then you'll put that on your wall and you look at that big wing and you look, oh.
That obviously. But I'm saying, you look at the Carrera, or even if you look at a Cayenne compared to an X5, you know, it's a softer design. It's not.
Well, that Cayenne Turbo, if you see a Cayenne Turbo at you in your rear view mirror, you'll get the out of the way. That also has presence.
100%. But yeah, this 911, it blew my mind. I mean, you know, I've obviously devoured hours of Porsche content on YouTube, and everyone talks about, the perfect steering. And, you know, when you sit in a 911, that's what you feel. It's perfect steering. You wouldn't think that a steering wheel could have the perfect diameter, could have the perfect width, but a 911 does.
And it's not fat.
Yeah.
That's the good thing. These 911 steering wheels are not fat and thick.
Thin.
They're thin.
Yeah.
So the first time you think, okay, this is not a sporty steering
Yeah.
wheel. But then you realize that the pedal weights, the steering weights, that feel, everything is just enough for a sporty drive.
And then once you're driving it, it's an EPAS system, this new 992.
Electric power steering.
Yeah, it's got an electric power steering. It started on the last generation of the 911.
Which broke the internet back then.
Yeah. But it's got feedback. You drive it and it's the perfect weight. It's not like, I find a lot of these sporty cars, AMGs, M cars, when you dial them up into Sport Plus, they're weighted, but it feels artificial weight. It feels like it's too heavy. But the 911, when you dial it up from normal to Sport Plus, the weight isn't increasing exponentially. It's a minor increase in weight, but it feels more dialed in. It feels more connected. And that steering it's just got me hooked. I mean, I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah, it's we've always said this, that Porsche, the electric power steerings on their cars are unbelievable because they're just feedback. And what they've done, so compared to the old hydraulic power steerings, which I have experienced, I've been fortunate enough to experience, they had noise. So you'd be going, and I remember this very clearly in Bahrain at the racetrack, right? Going uphill, it was a left-hander, I don't remember which turn. So going uphill in the earlier car, I think it was a 993, if I'm not mistaken. You go up and you can feel the front wheels getting light, and then you can feel that the chatter, that noise. And for me, the first time I experienced that, I had a heart and mouth moment. I was like, oh shit, right? And that was the noise, that was the steering feel that everybody talks about. You don't get that in electric power steerings because it dials that out. So for most people, it actually is a better thing because it makes it safer. It makes it more in control. Of course, that thing was a real super cool aspect of the 911. Like the fact that with the 911, the cornering shot, I don't know if you did that, but the cornering shot in a 911 is not a sideways shot, but it is of the inside front wheel lifting up. No, because it's got the weight at the back on the... So when you really gas it, and that's the other cool thing about the rear engine configuration, because the weight is on the rear, when you step on it, you have really good traction, like excellent traction. So you step on it and you actually have the inside wheel really lifting up.
The inside front wheel.
Inside front wheel. And that was a real cool aspect of these old 911.
I didn't manage to get the front wheel in the air, but you can see the squat, you can see the front suspension expanded.
And that means Atish was really pushing it.
Yeah, and it's not just acceleration, it's also braking, because with the fact that the engine's at the rear, when you brake and your weight goes forward, the fact that there's more weight at the rear means there's more weight over all four wheels, and that makes braking more effective. So even though it seems like the design of the 911 is the antithesis of what should be a good design, mid-engine car, it actually works, and they've obviously engineered it. They've got tons of electronics into these modern day 911, so that you've got 444 horsepower. It can whip around. So they've got electronics to make sure that's not happening. It's not snapping out of place all the time. But wow, man, it's got such good handling.
So what would you criticize on the car?
I didn't like the window, the buttons.
Were you okay with the gear lever?
I actually was. A lot of people, you included, said that you don't like the new wedge that sticks out of the...
A plastic wedge.
Yeah, it's got a little metal nerve finish on the top.
Yeah, but compared to that old pistol grip, that felt...
But that's the thing. No, I've never seen that. I've never felt that. I don't know what that's like. I've seen pictures of it, but that's about it. I got into this new 911 and it's a lot more minimal. There's less buttons. I mean, now even you look at the information cluster, it's still got the 5 dials, but 4 of them, the 2 surrounding the...
Only the tacho is an analog dial.
The tachometer is analog and the 2 surrounding them are digital. The screen, it's clean, it's neat. And the whole layout of the 911, it's functional. It's all there to make you less distracted from the interior and more focused on what's happening ahead of you, So I think it worked. I didn't mind it too much, honestly.
So nothing to criticize apart from the sticker price.
No, the windows. The price, oh god, I'm gonna start there.
And that's the thing, right? You're really enthusiast. You can't really afford a 911 anymore. I'm not sure whether there was ever a time when enthusiasts could afford, but we are living in the now. And because we're journalists, we are fortunate enough to get an opportunity to really drive these cars.
Which is why that price, this thing didn't go off in my head.
Yeah, but what's it, 2 crores?
It's 1.8 for the Carrera S, yeah.
1.8 crore
Base
rupees.
with no options, nothing.
Yeah, and this one had what, 40 lakh worth of options, right?
40 lakhs of options, and it was a very basic spec. It had no rear wheel steering. It had no PDCC, which is that active roll flattening that they have. It had no PCCB, which is like carbon ceramic brakes, and these are expensive options.
Yeah.
It had what? A red seatbelt, a red tachometer. These actually add up to a lot.
And the 360 camera, don't forget.
The 360 camera, a reversing camera for starters. It had fancy wheels. They weren't the base wheels. But apart from that, I couldn't think of any fancy options on this car.
Yeah, so 1.8 crore rupees for the base Carrera S.
For the Carrera S, the base Carrera will come later, I think.
Yeah, I think that'll be 1.6. Yeah. So that's the price that you're looking at.
The Cabriolet is 2 crores.
Cabriolet is 2 crores. So, well, pricing is an issue. Same with the F8. What's the price? 4 crore rupees. 4 crore rupees. It is coming to India in February 2020. So, well...
The Ferraris have always been expensive cars.
Yeah,
911s have been accessible performance.
True.
At least at one point in time they were.
True.
Our tax structures don't allow them to be that.
Yeah.
But it's just a pity, yeah. They're such good cars. They're such good cars.
So, on that note, right, let's wrap up this Thriller Driving podcast. I hope you've enjoyed listening to us ranting and raving and waxing eloquent on the F8 Tributo and the new 911. The new 911 driven in India, the F8 in Italy. The F8 will be coming to India next year, February 2020. It's not going to be at the Auto Expo, but it'll be around the same time. So some great cars coming our way. Some good news on the economic front also.
Yeah.
The tax rates have been dropped for corporates. How that affects us, I'm not too sure. But the stock market has gone up, which should aid sentiment. And manufacturers are cutting prices even more to take advantage of the less tax that they will be paying next year. So Maruti, yesterday they dropped prices by 5,000 rupees on all the cars. Not that 5,000 rupees makes that much of a difference, but in the head, in the mind, and that is what sentiment is affecting everything right now.
Volkswagen and Skoda both announced corporate
editions. So the things are improving on the economic front. Go out, buy your car, buy your bike. You won't get a better deal, that is for sure. Yeah. The festive season is coming up, and there is signs that things are going to pick up, which is important for the Indian economy and for us driving and riding enthusiasts. And watch out for our anniversary issue.
Yeah, go pick up the issue. It's really
so
special.
the anniversary issue is going to drop next week. It's going to be across our social media. I'm sure you will enjoy reading those stories if you like long format reading on super special cars.
Yeah.
Right? And we got some really special cars in that issue. It's an issue that we are really proud of, and we really like to hear your thoughts on this podcast as well as on the magazine that is going to drop next week. And on that note, thank you very much for watching, and please do let us know what you think.
Yeah. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff.
Cheers.